All right, we are recording now. Okay, welcome everybody to We Are Pistachio. We are a community built by relocating spouses for each other. More about that, but what is the essence of We Are Pistachio? I wanted to convey it in two images, right? This is the first image, and this is like what we like to call a pre-relocation image. And I've been there, Dipali has been there, folks from our team have been there, where you're before you're relocating, you have a life. I used to work for Citibank. I was an assistant vice president. I had friends, family, I had it all. And then suddenly I found myself relocating across 4 countries in 5 years, and I found myself alone, surrounded by this mountain of boxes. And I realized that I'm not alone. And that's how our team of We Are Pistachio, including Deepali, who's a co-founder, and our core team came together. And we said, hey, we don't have to be alone, surrounded by these boxes, overwhelmed. And this is not just our story. It's the story of almost a million relocating spouses who relocate. They find themselves depressed. They find themselves unemployed with a loss of identity. And we decided, we our Pistachio decided that that has to change. And that's who we are. We are a community built by relocating spouses for each other. And I won't read what's on this slide, but our singular purpose is that no relocating spouse should ever be alone. And we provide avenues such as these meetings, networking avenues. We have a Facebook group, and we provide opportunities to really upskill. So we have a lot of upskilling webinars. We also provide mentoring opportunities. We have a mentoring program that we've just launched. Some of you in the audience are part of that, and we provide networking opportunities like this. And more importantly, we highlight stories like the one we're going to highlight today. When we were relocating, when I was relocating 4 or 5 years ago, I struggled to find ideals. I struggled to find women like me who had relocated and yet had made success out of their lives. And that's why we want to feature women who have really taken this relocation journey and pivoted and made something out of themselves. This is our team. My name is Aditi Patel, and I'm the founder and chief relocating spouse. As I said, I've relocated multiple times, and out of this struggle, We Are Pistachio was born. Some of our team members are here, and I'll hand it over to Dipali, who's a co-founder, to quickly introduce herself as well.
Hi, my name is Dipali Paul. I relocated to the US in 2016, and like Aditi said, I had a great career back home. And I think either it was nuttiness or ignorance, I decided to move to the US, only to realize that this is the place where I'm going to start my career again from the scratch. What lay ahead of me was a journey of loneliness, rejection, absolutely no social or professional support. Through a random, Facebook post, I met Aditi, and we kind of decided to join forces and start We Are Pistachio. So that's a little bit about me. We have Anka, who's there on this call, in the audience with us. So we have Anka, Aida, and Pratiti, who are also all relocating spouses who work as volunteers with us. So yeah, we have a very nice, energetic, creative team that kind of keeps us going.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dipali. So we started as a Facebook group in January of 2020. We grew completely through the pandemic. We have 350 members now, and we've done about 20 plus events. So it's been a fun ride and an inspirational ride. So to the moment that all of you have been waiting for, it is my pleasure to welcome Tiffany Chancellor, and she's going to walk us through her story. And I want to introduce herself. And usually, when I meet people, sometimes it's all about I meet them and I get to know them as relocating spouses, right? But I met Tiffany in an entrepreneur leadership class, and I met her as a budding entrepreneur. one who was very driven and very passionate about social causes. And then I realized that she was actually a relocating spouse, and her journey had unfolded in a very in maybe different circumstances than mine, but it was still a difficult one. It was still one where she had to overcome some struggles, and that's when we realized that, oh my gosh, it would be amazing to share her story with all of us, because we truly believe that everyone has a story to share and we can all learn from that. She likes to describe herself as a mom, a budding entrepreneur, a Jesus lover. Faith is something really important for her, and she is here to share her story. So thank you again, Tiffany, for being here today. And I am going to hand it over to you. So go ahead and share your screen.
Hey everybody. Sharing. Okay. So today I am going to share my story of rising through relocation, as I like to call it. So we will begin. So that girl right there is a sun-loving farmer's market frequenter, just SoCal girl. And this picture was taken just 3 months before I relocated to Seattle. It was 3 months before I even had any idea what my near future held. So first, I will give you guys a little bit of a backstory. So this is me, 2008. I was graduating from Cal State Long Beach. I earned my degree in psychology, and throughout college, I had plans of going to graduate school, earning my doctorate, and helping people with their problems. That was what I wanted to do. But
you remind me of my brother. It's kind of just vibe outside the song. Most of us are angry. Most of us are strangely more alike than we.
Instead of going to graduate school, I decided that I would rather be a model. So modeling, I know that's probably kind of random from being a therapist to being a model, but modeling was something that was always a dream of mine since I was really little, girl. People used to always tell my mom, like, oh, she's so beautiful, she should be in commercials. And so my mom got me some headshots done, and we were gonna go with it, but my dad did not want me to do it. He said that he wanted me to have a normal childhood, so I didn't get a chance to realize those dreams. So when I graduated college, I decided, like, this is still something that I really want to do. And so I decided to go for it. I was in Southern California, I was young. It's quite a small window to break into that industry. So I went for it, and it was perfect being in Southern California because that's kind of like the mecca for all that stuff, modeling and acting and whatnot. And I did a lot of jobs. Too many to even remember. I've worked for shoe companies, Skechers to name one, clothing companies. I had an ad in Times Square at one point. I was in a lot of music videos, and that kind of led into acting. And so after many years of just hustling, because it is a hustle being an actor, I got to this point where I was in a conservatory style acting program studying the Meisner acting technique. I had booked 2 national commercials, which then led me to become a member of the Screen Actors Guild, or the SAG union, which when you're a member of SAG, when you book a national commercial, it's really awesome because your commercial is airing all over the country, and every time it airs, you get paid. So things were really starting to just thrive for me. The ball was really rolling. I was auditioning a lot. I was booking a lot. I was taking classes. Everything was really great, and I was feeling really good about where I was. And then I met him, and my whole life just took a turn, total turn. So we had a very fast and furious love affair. We met, we fell in love, and then he asked me to move up to Seattle, and I find myself with a very beloved member of the local football team. So I was not a relocating spouse initially. I was a relocating girlfriend, which is kind of terrifying, actually. So here I am in Seattle, and the way I saw it, it was cloudy, and I was a single dog mom. Professional athletes, they work all the time. Cam would be gone for work by 6 a.m. and he wouldn't get back home from work until 6 or 7 in the evening. And when he got home, he had to eat dinner. He had to watch film. He would have to do yoga, do a massage. Like, this was happening weekly. And I found myself home alone with these little furry creatures of mine. Those are our dogs, Bam Bam and Little Bit, which I was very grateful for them because they kept me company. Because at the time when I first got here, I didn't really have a lot of friends. So it was just me and them and my thoughts at home all day long, just kind of wondering, like, what's happening? Why is it so cloudy outside? I miss LA. I remember one morning I woke up and I looked outside and it was cloudy again. And I just burst into tears. I just, like, what is this? Like, I just wanted to go home, honestly. But I loved my, at the time, boyfriend. And so I stuck through it. And it was just a lot of kind of lonely moments trying to figure out, like, what direction am I going in? You know, I had this, like, this budding modeling and acting career. It was finally going in the right direction. And then I come here. The market for modeling and acting in Seattle is not as big as it is in LA. So I was not auditioning as much or working as much. And so it was kind of hard. I just was feeling confused, and I think in some moments almost a little resentful because I had worked really hard to get where I was at. And the off season was just as busy as football season. There was meetings with council members. There was foundation events, toy drives, food drives. There were surgeries, rehab, football camps.
There you go. 3 more players, 3 more players.
So as you can see, I found myself feeling like I was kind of like a supporting role, a supporting cast member to the Cam show, which was fine. Overall, I didn't mind it. I didn't know what I was getting myself into initially, but deep down inside, I still felt like I need to do something, because this is just, I'm doing everything in support of this man, but, like, I need to find myself. I need to find my footing in this new world that I'm in. So then over time, 2 became 1 and eventually 3. Life just really took off. We're still on this fast and furious love affair. He popped the question, we got engaged, we got married, and then we became pregnant. So we're soon to be parents. But I'm going to take a couple steps backwards because there's a lot of things that happened in between us getting engaged and becoming pregnant. So, you know, we're married. Now I am Mrs. Chancellor. Like, I'm in the game, going to games, like, just really just living this football life. We're going to Seahawk Christmas parties and away games, traveling, and suddenly, like, people started to notice me. But it wasn't for me, it was for him.
There you go. There you go. There it is. Tiffany, Mrs. Chancellor.
Yes.
So, tell me.
So it's kind of like, okay, I'm being noticed, I'm being recognized, but it was still just kind of for Cam. And I just felt like a lot of the things that I was doing was just for my now husband. And I still didn't feel like I just knew the direction that I personally was going in. And then suddenly you go from being in the game and you can very quickly be on the sidelines. Cam suffered a major neck injury. And this first picture here, I'm outside of the stadium in Phoenix at the Cardinals game. This was before the game, had no idea what was about to happen. He gets injured in a play. And then I remember I was going to go down to the family area because after the games, the players are all in one area. You go down, say hi, and then you leave. And as I'm going down to the family area, he calls me and is like, I'm on my way to the hospital. So it's like, oh, shoot, what's going on? Because I didn't see the play that he got hurt in. He didn't show that he was hurt, rather. So that was kind of crazy. And there was a lot of uncertainty that followed. This next picture here is the first game that he didn't play. It was the first game after this one where we're just walking into the stadium to go to the game. And so there was a lot of a lot of uncertainty, we don't know what's going to happen. That's a major change, going from playing football your entire life to suddenly just at the snap of a finger, you're injured, you don't know what's going on. And me, his wife at this time, like, I'm just there trying to support him through this. And the whole phase on the way to retirement, that's a whole other webinar. I can go into that, but there was a lot of low moments in that time, but we eventually came through those moments by the good grace of God and a lot of prayer from a lot of our prayer warriors. And that's when we realized the real hustle begins. We had to figure out, what are we going to do? Because we're not going to be having these $1 million checks coming in anymore to support our life. So what are we going to do? So we decide we got to figure out, like, okay, we're going to start investing our money into things and figure out what type of work we're going to do going forward, and how are we going to create generational wealth, because that's something that's really important for us to create generational wealth, especially just being in the African American community. That's not something that's really passed down. So we're kind of here just at the beginning trying to start new things. So we decide it's time to build an empire. So we start Chancellor Enterprises, and that's like our parent company over all of our various investments. So flash forward to today, we are in food, fashion, and real estate. We're invested in a coffee shop in Virginia, which is where my husband is from. We came across that. I used to go to this coffee shop when we were there in the off season in Virginia, and I was telling Cam, like, this place is really good, you got to come try it out. So he tried it out, he really liked it, and we were like, okay, we want in on this, because we learned that it was a new company. And so we got in contact with the founders of that company and we invested into them. So we're part owners of, it's called Town Center Cold Press. We are also part owners in a shoe company called Mark Nolan, and we have our own collection within that shoe company. That situation came about, the woman that did his suits for our wedding, she has her own company called the Groomsman Suit, but she's also part owner in Mark Nolan. And so she called Cam one day and asked him, like, would you be interested in starting your own shoe line? And my husband, one thing about him, he's always been really good at involving me in stuff where he can. And so he said, sure, I'm interested, as long as my wife can design shoes as well. So we have our own shoe line called the Chancellor Collection. We are very heavily invested in real estate. We have rental properties in Virginia. We have a couple of commercial properties that we're invested in. And then we're finally going to start doing some real estate here in Seattle. We found the right opportunity. We partnered with somebody and we're going to do a new build. That picture down there in the bottom corner it's the house that's going to be next door to the house that we're building, but it's the same architecture. So I'm going to be taking on the interior design of this home, and we're going to start that journey. And then I decided I need to do something that is just me, because me and Cam do a lot of partnered work, but I wanted to do something that was me. And so I decided to start my own specialty dessert shop called Cobbler Connection, and it is focused on my grandma, my late grandmother, she's passed away now, her peach cobbler recipe, which I think is the best. I know everybody thinks that their grandma's peach cobbler is the best, but I think mine is the best. So I am starting on that journey. So my story is really just beginning. I've learned a lot from these short, brief 5 years that I've been here in Seattle, and I've realized, with a lot of faith in God and trusting in the process, trusting that everything's gonna be all right, everything is gonna get aligned eventually, exploration of self-reflection, and a little bit of courage, all of those things can really take you far. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Virtual applause. Tiffany, I think, you had me at that moment where you said it was cloudy and I just wanted to cry. I have been there. And I know a lot of folks, we've heard those stories from our members, our community members who've relocated, who talk about this moment. So thank you for sharing that moment, and thank you for taking us through your in your life, a window in your life, and through your vulnerability. Really, really appreciated that.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure. Thank you guys for letting me share my story. I've never done this before. This is my first webinar, my first time really sharing my story with anybody. So I'm grateful that you had me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we want to just open up the floor to anybody who would like to add any comments or ask questions to Tiffany. We're a small group, so we would love to hear from all of you. If you have any questions for Tiffany, any comments, what did anything that she said that resonated with you, the floor is open. You can come off mute and share away.
Yeah. So Tiffany, when you were sharing your story, the realization that I came to is whether you move from SoCal to Seattle or from another country to Seattle, it's equally a lonely journey, right? We always think that probably just because you're moving states, it might not be as difficult. But your story kind of resonated with all of us here because it's exactly the same lonely journey that all of us go through.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't something when I moved, it was kind of like I'm just going to jump off this cliff and hope that God catches me. I didn't think about it a lot. It was something that I knew I just needed to do, and I did it quickly. I didn't tell just a few family members and a few friends because I didn't want anybody trying to change my mind and tell me, are you sure you want to do this? So going into it, I don't think I really knew what I was getting myself into, and I definitely didn't know how cloudy Seattle was. I had never been here before, so yeah. I'm glad I did it though.
Wonderful. We have a comment from Anka who says, "Thank you for being vulnerable." Right.
Of course.
So I have a question. First of all, what would you hope for in terms of, like, I've been in Seattle for 30 years. What would you hope for somebody who's been here a long time to connect with you? What ways do you see that? My husband and I have a goal to kill the Seattle freeze, so we end up talking to all of our neighbors and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is that how you approach people? And then second question is, I saw your Instagram post last night and I just thought it was phenomenal. And I was wondering if you were going to pursue any social justice foundations or social justice work.
Okay. Well, the first question, I would say as far as approaching people, like my method, I mean, for one, being like married to a football player, there's kind of a little, I guess, clan of the girlfriends and wives. And Cam was really good about hitting up some of the other wives and telling them, like, reach out to her, talk to her, hang out with her. But like beyond that, church was big for me. I joined a Bible study group, and going to church definitely was big. I feel like that helps you kind of connect with more people, get to know people. I was also fortunate that I met some people through people that I knew back home in California and sort of kind of like forged those relationships. But I think you just kind of got to maybe like join things. I don't know if you go to church or Bible studies or anything like that, but that's helpful. And as far as your second question, well, at this moment, I mean, I hosted a march like a couple months ago, like for, social justice, trying to get people's minds in that direction and, trying to encourage conversation at home. And so we marched across the 90 bridge. But as far as like any foundation work, maybe in the future, my husband used to have a foundation back home that was called Cam Cares, where we would raise money to help the kids in his neighborhood because he grew up really poor. Right now, as far as the way we're helping, we decided to try and be a little bit more behind the scenes and just kind of like choose causes that resonate with us and donate. But that could change in the future. So we'll see. I definitely was encouraged with the march that I did. It was amazing turnout. I didn't know that many people were going to show up. Me and my friend just kind of threw it together and we're like, okay, let's do this. So it's important work and something that I will always talk about or be interested in. I hope I answered your questions.
You did. And your post really made me feel a lot better about the election results last night. You know, so I can still, you know, I'm still going to be doing the things that I do. So
yeah, absolutely. I don't know if all of you might not follow me on Instagram, but I turned in my vote yesterday and I decided to talk about it. And I think it's really important to understand that we're all much more than casting a vote. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in between that we can't stop doing. We can't just, I personally believe that we can't just totally rely on government to solve all the problems, because as you can see, is they're not doing that great of a job. The government's not always reliable with a lot of things, the way I see it. So I believe that each of us as individuals have the power in our own households and in our own communities to do work. And it definitely starts within your four walls. That's one thing my grandma used to always say, like, you got to have your four walls together, you know, get your four walls together, and then you can do great work in the world, because you never know who is watching you, especially with social media. You know, we actually see like, okay, I have these followers, you know, and that's an opportunity to be thoughtful about like what you're putting out into the world and the ways you encourage people.
Absolutely, yeah. And Barbara, I want to tag on to your comment of the Seattle freeze. You know, we are Pistachio is a welcoming community, so feel free to join our Facebook group. We'll put it in the chat. We are all about busting the Seattle freeze and you know, welcoming folks, because we've been through that. So feel free to join us for our upcoming events as well. We have a question from, I think it's from Sindhu. It's, what was your inspiration to gain an identity for yourself?
Oh man, that's a good question. Probably, I would say honestly, throughout life, that's always been something that was just innately important to me. I was an only child as a kid, so I was the only one in the house. So I was always pretty confident in myself. So if anything, throughout the years, like my identity of self has just kind of like changed, depending on where I'm at, you know, like before moving here, I was a model and actress, and that was something that I wanted to do. I pursued it. And then once I got, you know, started working, then that's how I saw myself. That's who I was. Here in Seattle, now I'm a wife. Now I'm a mom. I'm a budding entrepreneur. But probably the biggest thing, I'm going to take this to a spiritual level. Like, I never lose sight of my identity in God and like who he created me to be. I don't want to get too biblical, but that's really big for me. Just remembering who I am in Christ. I'm a Christian, and all the things that he says that I am. So that's always first. I hope I answered that question.
Wonderful, thank you. And we have a question from Ida, which is another interesting one. What would be the advice you would give to your younger self? Or maybe, and I'm going to add a little bit to that, like you showed us that picture of this carefree you just 3 months before you were to relocate. What advice would you give that person?
Oh man, that's such a good question. What would I tell my younger self? Well, my younger self, my younger self, I would probably tell, don't get into a long-term relationship. So before I was with my husband, before we met, I was in a really long relationship, like way too long for a young person. So that's what I would tell my younger self, like, don't do that. The person in that picture that you saw, the advice I would give would be probably just literally like to just hang in there. There were so many times when I first moved here where I literally with the clouds, I would feel like I was just in this like bubble. Like I couldn't even see the blue skies. And for somebody like me coming from California, that was a big deal for me. I went from one extreme to the other, and I would just feel like, what's happening? Am I even still on the planet? Just feeling just lost, very disconnected. And so I would tell that girl, like, hang in there. I promise you, like, you're gonna get through that. It's literally a phase. Because there were moments when I felt like, well, I guess this is the rest of my life. Moments when I was really down, particularly when my husband was, you know, had his neck injury and trying to figure out what we were going to be doing. There was a lot of low moments where I just felt like, I guess this is it. I guess I'm just going to settle for this. This is life. You got to know that things are phases, there's seasons, and things always, you know, balance out, if that makes sense.
Yes, you bet. Great advice. And I think Sindhu replied to the earlier question that you answered, that you did, and that you could relate to your reply word to word. um, we have another question, which is, you mentioned cobbler connections. So tell us about cobbler connections.
So that is Color Connection. It's a dessert shop, to put it simply. My grandma, well, first of all, I'll give you a little story. My grandmother grew up very poor in the South, in Louisiana, like in the 40s, and I'm mixed. My mom is Black, my dad is white. So this is my mom's my mom's mom, her recipe. So growing up in the South, super poor, you know, like back in those days, I can't even imagine like what life was like for her. So fast forward, she meets my grandpa, who also grew up in the South. He was from Texas. Brothers, like 6 of them, like living in like a 1-bedroom little tiny shack. They didn't have a lot. And so they got married, had a bunch of kids, and over time they really like gained a lot for themselves, you know. They were homeowners, and they lived in a nice neighborhood on the hill. So they did well for themselves. But one thing that my grandparents always did was they fed us a lot. And I can remember them always saying, like, you can eat as much as you want, just don't waste it, because they grew up poor. And over time, I began to realize, like, wow, like food is really my family's love language. My grandma, she was always baking things, and one of those things was peach cobbler. And everybody in my family loves it. People that I've given it to outside of my family, they love it. And I decided, you know what, this would be a really cool business to start, a kind of a way to carry on my grandma's legacy, kind of share, like, it's my way of sharing love. Like, I love to feed people, I love to host people. So why not do that with my grandma's dessert? And they're mini sizes. So my grandma's recipe is like a regular size pan, but the cobblers that I do, they're little mini 8-ounce ones. And I've been experimenting with different recipes and stuff like that.
Wonderful. You let us know how folks can order so that we can tell people how to get to those.
So we'll have to keep you updated on that. I'm in the process of getting all the legal stuff, like my business license and all of that stuff. This is the part, honestly, I'll be honest with you right now, candid moment. Like, I've been suffering really bad from imposter syndrome, just feeling super like almost kind of stuck. Like, okay, I have this idea, I think it can work. Now what do I do? Like, so I've been really working towards like just busting through that wall and taking steps. I've had a couple phone calls with some people that have been helping me, you know, figure out how to work through that and process through it. So coming soon.
Wonderful, wonderful. I do have some questions coming in, but I want to keep open it up. Are there other questions that you would like to have answered? All right. So we have one question, which is, I have two actually. So one of it is related to Instagram. I know Barbara mentioned an Instagram post. You have a huge Instagram following. You know, can you share some tips? Because I think that how does one create an Instagram presence? What are some best practices? How do you create your identity and really, you know, portray that with authentically on Instagram? I'm sure you know, a lot of us would love to hear that from you, because I think you do that really well.
Thank you. Well, I think the biggest thing is, like, you really have to kind of just be yourself. So I had to sort of decide like what you want to do with your platform. So for me, like, I had a decent following before I met Cam, but then once I got with him and got married, like, my following kind of increased. And for me, it's always, I feel like that's a responsibility, your platform, no matter what, if you have 50 followers or 600,000 followers, like, that's a responsibility. You have people that are looking at you, and it's important to give them good food, you know, feed their souls. That's kind of, I guess, the angle that I take. I want to make sure that whatever I put out is quality, whether I'm saying something that inspires people, or maybe to get people to laugh, or to get people to think. those are sort of the things that are important for me in my social media. And so I think the biggest thing is just be yourself and be honest and be consistent with that.
Great, great advice. I think just that feed your soul, give them ways to feed their soul too. I think that's important. And I love that analogy where you say, whether you have 50 or 500,000, you still have that responsibility to the followers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing I would say is like engage with your following. Like that's one thing that like I actually talk to my followers as best I can. I can't always keep up with it, but I talk to them and they appreciate that, you know, and I think that's a way to kind of like retain a following. And before you know it, like they start looking to you towards like for their like everyday, like I needed my everyday nugget or just whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a question which is, do you miss acting?
Yes, I do. So when I came here, like I shot a couple commercials up here, like some regional commercials. But then I got pregnant. Well, first before that, like being with Cam when he was still playing, we traveled a lot all the time, especially in the off season. We weren't here. So that kind of affected my ability to audition because you need to be present to audition. Because the way it works usually is my agent will send me an audition like the night before it could be, you know, and I got to tell him like, okay, I'm available for this. So if you're not here, it's hard to audition. Then I got pregnant and the work kind of slowed down because I just don't think there was a lot of maternity work up here. So I just started kind of getting back into it. So I've had a couple auditions that I didn't book as a big part of that industry. You get a lot of no's, but you got to keep going. So I do miss it because it's been a long time since I've been on set.
Yeah, well, thank you. Just piggybacking on that nose question, relocating spouses very often face a lot of rejection from jobs, rejection from trying to make friends, from trying to make a network, and you've faced a lot of no's. So, what advice do you have? How should one deal with rejection? Any tips that we can keep in mind?
Well, I guess I'm trying to think of a way to apply what a friend of mine advice that he gave me regarding auditioning. Trying to think of how I could apply that to everyday life. He told me like, you got to leave it in the room. So once you finish your audition, you got to leave it there and go on to the next. So I guess in situations with rejection, like leave it in that moment and keep going, you know, like you can't stop going. Like you can't stop trying. You can't stop living. You got to keep going. So if you face rejection, just leave it in the room, leave it in that interview room, leave it in that coffee shop, leave it wherever, leave it there and go on towards the next thing.
Love it. Leave it in the room. I think that's going to be our mantra for any rejection. I love that, and got some comments coming in saying that's such great advice. All right. Other questions from the group or even comments? We would love to hear your voices, all the participants. Go ahead, Vinita. Hi.
Hi. So I just love that you have this page where all these supporting spouses can come and share their story. And Tiffany, I loved your story. And I love that you are keeping your identity and working towards building it. I came back in '94 when we didn't have a resource like this or even emails, Facebook, nothing was there. So it was definitely hard to move from India to here and then travel across the United States many times following the spouse. So I feel like now I'm kind of feeling more settled after 25 some years and finding my identity. But I really appreciate all of you that you're on the quest of keeping this group, keeping the community, and working towards your individual identity as well, and not losing that just because you're married and moving and having kids, and that doesn't become your title, So thank you. I appreciate your experiences and your story and your journey. So
yeah, of course. Thank you for listening. That's so important what you said, not losing yourself. That was huge for me coming here. And you can imagine like coming here and then being with somebody who, this man, you see the jerseys on the wall, like this guy has like fans, legit fans, and they're obsessed with him. And so kind of finding your identity next to this like giant, so to speak, kind of was an interesting journey, but it can be done, and it's important. It's really important.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you, Vinita. It's so good to see you. And I feel like, you spoke about you relocating in 1994, and one can imagine that there was no FaceTime or calling, and so that would have been a whole new challenge itself. And definitely would love to bring you on and share your story some other time. Other questions, comments before we wrap up? Right. Astrid, do you have a question? All right. Wonderful. If no questions, can I get an emoji if you want to show a reaction, to share your appreciation for Tiffany? You can show either use your reaction on Zoom, or either a thumbs up or an applause. Wonderful. Great.
I just have it's not a comment, it's not a question, but just a comment. Tiffany, we just assume that, because you're a celebrity spouse, things would be way easier for you than what it is for, let's say, me, Aditi, or the rest of us on this group. But thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable, because, it was a realization that it's not. It's equally difficult, or probably exponentially more difficult.
Yeah, that's a whole other webinar that I can get into. There's a lot of pressure put on professional athletes, as far as like, a lot of the times they're the one that made it, and a lot of them come from just poor neighborhoods, and so there's a lot of pressure to take care of people and just all types of stuff. So but we get through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Tiffany. I felt like time had kind of slowed down for the last 45 minutes, and you took us into your world. And we realized that although your world may be slightly different from ours, but in so many levels it is similar. The struggles that we go through, the emotions we go through, the vulnerabilities. And thank you to our attendees. You show up for every one of our events. I know there are a million places you could be, but you showed up here today to hang out with We Are Pistachio, and we really exist for each of you. We like to call this as your community of relocating spouses, a safe place where you can come and listen to other stories, share your own, feel a sense of kinship, and you don't have to be alone going through all of this. You can bank on the expertise of so many women in this room. So Dipali had put our group link in the chat. We have a vibrant Facebook community. Do join us. And I do want to share our upcoming event. We do have a webinar on Monday, which is going to talk about what is returnship. So if you've been on a career break and you want to get back, you can find out what a returnship is. We're partnering with Reach Hire for this event. I'm going to put the Eventbrite link to register in the chat. So join us for that. And again, our promise, we like to call it the Pistachio Promise, is no relocating spouse is ever alone. Thank you again, and hope to see you in our groups, interacting with us. And again, if any of you would love to share your stories with us in an event like this, we would love to feature you. So thank you again, Tiffany. Thank you, everyone. We'll hang around a little bit if anybody wants to chat. Otherwise, thank you again, and bye.